Can you all see me? Please, I need responses. Okay, okay. Thanks a lot for having me today.
Yes, yes.
Um, it's awesome. I feel privileged, and I hope that by the end of today's meeting, you would take home one or two stuffs from our meeting today. I have very short time, and the matter of Nigeria is a very big one. You can all agree with me that it's not something that can be finished in one day. It's complex, it's complicated, it's like a labyrinth, really, quite convoluted, if I might say. But we have to start from somewhere. In making measurements, it's normally important to set a starting point. And from that starting point, you can then scale up things to whatever level you want to. So talking about Nigeria, today being the very first day, I learned that this is supposed to be a series. Okay, so I would like to talk about Nigeria from the standpoint of where we are currently. Most of us really don't understand the exact position that Nigeria is in now. I didn't have this discussion with John Namaka, what he said about his colleague that traveled to United Kingdom. It's an experience of most persons. Many come to the US, they don't want to go back to Nigeria. In virtually any other part of the world, people step out from Nigeria, they really don't want to go back. And the big question we must ask ourselves is this: how long will this continue? So the very first thing I want to talk about is, where are we today as a nation? And I have a lot to say, but a lot written down, a lot of facts that I can pull up from Harvard University studies, and I hope to pull them up as much as time would permit me. So first of all, we must realize this, that nation building is a serious thing. The building of a nation, the building of a system, sustainable growth, you don't come about it by a fleece. It doesn't come by mistake. It's something that people build intentionally. So if you know any working system in the world today, just be aware that people sat down, people planned, and people built the system. I listened to one of the speeches of Chinua Achebe some days ago, and he said something. He said that he feels it's a crime against his conscience to find safety and solace in a nation built by some other people's sweat, when we cannot sit back and build our own nation. So he was in fact saying that it should not be something of pride that you've decided to spend your whole life in another nation without recognizing that wherever it is that you decide to spend your own life, your whole life, was actually built by human beings like you and I. I will take it a step further by saying this. There are a lot of movements happening around the world, the Black Lives Matter, different kind of movements, and all over the world. And you see, blacks are struggling to gain recognition globally. It's not just about Nigeria. But I've always said something to people, which I would repeat here. Look around the world. If there is one race that sadly, it's really sad, cannot point at a single nation that they have built by their own strength, that they have built by their intelligence, and that nation is successful and is doing very well, and that nation is looked upon as a beacon of light by others of all races. The black race is that one race that has not successfully done that. Before now, you might not know that there was a time the Chinese people were regarded as dogs. In fact, historically, history has it that in China, then they would write some things on restaurants like Chinese and dogs are not permitted here. That was the position they were placed until China and Japan and people of that region rose up and decided to build their own nation by their own selves. to build something tangible, something the world could look up to, something everybody that could reconcile themselves with that particular race could see as a source of pride. That was actually the point where Chinese people and Japanese people and all these other parts of the world, that these other people that hail from that part of Asia, actually were elevated to a position of respect. It's important that I make you to realize this, that respect is never bestowed on anyone. You earn respect. And I must say this, whether we believe it or not, Africa has not earned the respect of the world. I'm an African. I say it with every humility, with annoyance, if I must say that. Africa has not earned the respect of the world. Yet we are demanding respect in different parts of the world. That being said, I'll get back to Nigeria. You will as well agree with me that if you ask an average Nigerian to talk about the wealth of Nigeria, they would quickly resort to the mineral resources we have. First of all, they will tell you about our oil. They will tell you about the gold deposits. They will tell you about all sorts of things, particularly oil. We have that inherent notion that we are rich and we have hope because of the oil and gas deposits in Nigeria. Unfortunately, I would like to debunk that myth. It's actually falsehood. There was a time when natural resources were the sources of the wealth of nations. But the world has actually moved past that era. It's actually Africa and a few parts of the world that are still dwelling on that particular area. And the sad part of this is this: a huge population of Nigerians have not yet realized this basic truth up until this time. So when I see youths actually revolting, talking about youth governance, it's an interesting thing. But the question I ask myself, do these people really understand the world enough to navigate Nigeria in the right direction? Are they planning to come into governance to continue the trend or to keep guiding a failing system? Because the system we operate in, our focus as a nation, when I talk about this, I'm talking about, forget about our leaders. We have our own parts to play in the current condition. Now, look at yourself now. You will realize that before now, probably before this meeting, you were thinking that Nigeria is a wealthy nation because we have oil. If you still have that thought, then trust me, you are really far behind with regards to how fast the world is moving. In fact, there was a research done by Harvard University. It's been some years ago. That was, I think, in 1999, where they studied the reasons why the nations with the highest deposits of mineral resources are actually some of the poorest nations in the world. You know, before now, we would always attribute it to wars and stuff like that, and so many other issues. But that's not the case. I will tell you this: if Nigeria becomes the most stable nation in the world, so long as our focus is still on oil, we will remain poor. And I would give you facts to prove what I'm telling you. Now, they conducted an extensive research on the sources of the wealth of nations. And they realized that nations with the speed at which the world is moving, actually nations with the highest natural resources are actually at risk. They're the most endangered nations in the world as we speak. I'll give you examples. Most of you would have heard about USSR, the old Russia. And you should be aware that USSR was once, well, arguably the most powerful nation in the world. The most powerful group, it was a group of different nations really, but let's call it a nation. USSR was once the most powerful nation in the world. And not just powerful by virtue of military might. It was the citadel, it was a hub of every natural resource you can think about. Mineral, gold, everything you can think about. Russia had it all. They had oil, gas, and they still have it till now. And the then powers that be in Russia during the communist time, they prided so much in their mineral resources and felt that all they needed to do to grow the economy of Russia was to channel the efforts of their people to harnessing those mineral resources and making fortunes out of it. While that was happening, a new kind of economy was evolving in the world, what Harvard called the knowledge-based economy. And I will come to that quickly, the knowledge-based economy, and how it is the secret of the wealth of nations. I'm making these things clear because I'm seeing a new generation of leaders coming up in Nigeria. And I want an informed generation, because information would influence how far you would go as a leader. The policies you are going to make, the investments that you are going to put in, the sectors you are going to focus your investment will be informed by understanding knowledge. And sorry, the current crop of leaders we have, and unfortunately, the current crop of youths that are coming up in Nigeria will still continue the same trend that we have, because we are, to a good extent, not aware of the things that make for a successful nation. We think we know. We think that what we need is just to end SARS. But that's a very big mistake. I've heard Nigerians arguing and they say, oh, this state, they don't have any natural resource. How can they survive? Now, I will make you realize that the most successful nations, the best economies in the world today, have next to nothing in terms of natural resources. So how is it that they were able to build successful systems that are surviving, successful systems that are blossoming far more than even the peaceful nations with natural resources? And when I'm done, I'm going to send, I'll recommend some books for you guys to read, books that I will really advise every one of us to buy and read them up. So, like I said, I also point out, you are all aware that there was a time that a dollar was equal to 1 naira. Now, if we are asked why naira has dropped so much in value, I bet we would quickly say that it's because of political instability, but it's not the truth. Even if we have the most stable system in Nigeria, with our current national focus on oil and gas and natural resources, Nigeria will keep will keep getting poorer. It's a promise, and this is a well-researched. This is actually a proven research. Nigeria is not the only country with natural resources. We have South Africa, we have Saudi Arabia. You think Saudi Arabia is rich? They are not. So that being said, Soviet Union eventually, what broke up Soviet Union? It was actually economic matters. It kept going down, poverty, the people were getting poorer and poorer and poorer until the government could no longer sustain the economic situation in Soviet Union, and they eventually split. When you hear about the Cold War, you can read that up. The difference between America and Soviet Union, and what eventually led to the balkanization of the old Soviet Union. Permit me to explain these things. Unfortunately, I've not delved deep into the issue of Nigeria, but you need to understand something. So now, Soviet Union fell, it broke up, and the research actually shows that as the years go by, more nations will disappear from the map of the world based on poverty index. The more the wealth of nations are going down, and most of these nations are the nations with the best natural resources, more of them will be disappearing from the map of the world. This was actually done in 1999. And as we speak, many of those nations that they listed out in the research are actually going through a lot of economic turmoil, a lot of political issues. It's as if their predictions are coming to pass. And these predictions are not just based on economic, political issues. It's purely economics. Now, let's talk about, I would point this out. Let's talk about Singapore. How many of us know that in 1965, Singapore was so poor that they actually went to Malaysia and begged the Malaysian government to absorb the whole nation of Singapore because they couldn't sustain themselves? Malaysia rejected the offer because they felt by absorbing Singapore, they would get poorer, their resources would be limited. When you have more people, you have more mouths, you have more people to feed from the little resources they had. What did Singapore do? They were left with no other option but two things. It's either they remain poor or they educate their people. It's either they remain poor or they educate their people. Singapore decided to educate their people. Their then president, Lee Kuan Yew, decided to invest the little money Singapore had in the education of their people. When I mean education, I mean real education. It became the most important goal of the government. They educated the minds of their people so much so that by 1985, Singapore, I think by 1985, the average income or the average money generated by a single citizen of Singapore was around $8,000 as compared to their British colonizers that was around $11,000 then. By 1999, Singapore was already steps ahead of Britain, $2 ahead of Britain. And as we speak, the per capita income of Singapore is actually bigger than Britain. Malaysia kept going down with all their natural resources. How did these people achieve this? Now I come to what I call the knowledge-based economy. And it's actually what is thriving in the world, an economy that is built on the minds of the people. Education, awareness of technology. The world has moved so fast that people can literally sit in one room and build firms that are based on services that in a few years would be worth more than entire nations combined together. That's exactly what it's already happening in the world. And based on Harvard research too, more nations, most of these developed nations are beginning to need Africa less. If you notice, a lot of things are happening in Africa. Who really cares? A lot of things are happening in Cameroon. You're expecting US to run to Cameroon and save you people. Expecting Britain to. Why would they do that? The reason why they used to do that, it's declining. They really don't have need of Africa. The world has moved forward. The world is in a knowledge-based economy. Service, when I mean knowledge, I mean services. For example, Microsoft Word, they don't get, Microsoft Word is not software, they are not rich based on agriculture. They are not rich based on gold. But the worth of Microsoft Word alone is bigger than so many nations that have oil and so many other things combined together. That is a fact. I'll give you another example. Brazil has a lot of lands, like viable, fertile lands. I hope we are aware of that. Now, you would expect that Brazil would be one of the best exporters of flowers. But I will surprise you. You might not be able to guess the country that is the best exporter of flowers. It's Holland. A country that is so tiny. They have no land, it's cold, they have nothing. And realizing that they have nothing, they invested in education, sciences, and technology. The world has grown so big that with little you can do much. Holland is the largest exporter of of flowers. In fact, the airport in Holland is I think one of the it's rated one of the busiest in Europe, and it's because the a single flower spending an extra 1 minute than it should in the airport means that the country is losing money. In fact, in Holland, horticultural professors are one of the most, they are some of the most revered professors in Holland. Most respected in Holland. So you have a lot of nations, you have Israel, you have so many countries that have very little natural resources, but they have built an economy that is based on intelligence of the people, an economy that is based on technology. And as we speak today, the gap between wealthy nations and poor nations is currently around 390 to 1. It used to be 5 to 1 in the days of in the mid 20th century, when oil and all these things were still reigning. It used to be 5 to 1. But with the advent of IT, with the advent of, as computers kept gaining influence, semiconductor industries, people kept needing less of these mineral resources. You now have companies that are bigger than economies. It has actually increased to 390 to 1. And it's predicted that in the next few decades, the gap will widen to about 1,000 to 1. Do you know the reason? Why the developed nations are moving very fast? Why they are building economies based on the mind of the people, opening economies. In fact, in most developed countries, the only duty of the government is a stable economy and a stable political system. Every other thing is driven by the people. That's all the government does. Create a conducive environment by a stable economy, create a conducive environment by a stable political system, and everything else is driven by the people. As we speak today, genetics, most of you might not know, but the DNA, let me use the word genetics, and all these industries are growing so fast that I told a friend recently, I said, I realized that the people that actually know what is happening in the world is less than 2%. I read a lot of things recently concerning what is happening in Harvard, the research that is taking place. Believe me, just take this down, but you remember, God will keep you alive to see this. In the next few years, in the next 10 years, you will have companies that have just like 10 staffers or 50 staffers that will be richer than Nigeria, Cameroon, Uganda joined together in the next 10 years, just by virtue of genetics, genetic engineering. You actually don't even need an extended piece of land too much for agriculture with the concept of genetics and technology today. That is why so many small nations are doing so. Look at Israel, for example. What does Israel have? Nothing. Just intelligent minds. The Israeli government invested in the people. And as they invested in the people, the minds of the people got developed. The more the people are the ones driving the economy through goods and through services, not necessarily goods, even through their what I call. I'll get to explain better probably during the question and answer session. What I call developing a mind and knowledge-based economy, an economy that is, you can research on that later, an economy that is not based on natural resources, but on the ability to use technology and to use technology to carve out firms and a system that provides services. And the service industry is the wealthiest industry in the world today. The service industry is the wealthiest industry in the world today. And so many nations are building their economies around the service industry. While in Nigeria, we are fighting for oil. If you discuss with anybody about the future of Nigeria today, the first thing they will point out to you is the oil in Niger Delta. Oh, what will happen with the oil in Niger Delta? How are we going to share this oil? What of the gold in Sokoto? And that's exactly the reason why they're saying that in the nearest future, if we are not careful, Nigeria will disappear from the map of the world. And it will not necessarily be by war. Economic situations will force Nigeria to disappear. It has happened to so many nations, and our case cannot be different if we don't take precautions. Why am I saying all these things? Just to take our minds off the current concentration of Nigeria as a nation. We are the young ones coming up. We must understand that we have a lot to learn. I'm telling you the fact. This is what I realized for myself, and it's helped me. We have a lot. Most of us know next to nothing about what is happening in the world. We know next to nothing about how economies work. We know next to nothing about governance. We just went to school and graduated with certificates, and it's a very serious problem. So when I see, are you not surprised when you find that many of the young persons that agitated in Nigeria some years ago, when they take up political positions, they become exactly like the people they were agitating against before? Doesn't that surprise you? Now, I will tell you something. It does not surprise me. You cannot give more than what you have. It's a natural fact. You see, when you press this, let me use give an example. When you press an orange, for example, it's the content that comes out. Am I right? See, when you press an orange, you don't expect a mango to come out. So when people find themselves in certain positions, when they are pressed by situations, their content immediately shows off. So they are actually doing the much they know. And trust me, many young Nigerians know very little, but we don't actually realize this. Ask a young Nigerian about genetics. Ask a young Nigerian about the data economy, and you'll be surprised by what you would hear. And when I mean a young Nigerian, I don't mean just anybody. I mean a graduate. And when I'm saying this, you can actually be quietly evaluating yourself. Sadly, I see a lot of seminars flying around Nigeria, and all I see is data collection and oil and gas industry. This oil and gas, I was like, and it gets to me, I'm like, what is wrong with this nation? What is wrong? The world is moving faster. The world is getting past oil and gas. As we speak, the Prince of Saudi Arabia has realized that they are quickly diversifying the economy of Saudi Arabia into tourism and so many other things because he has seen the future. And in Nigeria, we are still going about conducting seminars and so many things on how to help the oil wells in so and so place to produce better. They're still telling you that Nigeria is so and so part of it. In fact, NNPC is still sending teams to northern Nigeria to discover gas in the north, instead of developing an economy and a platform that will help young minds to thrive by technology. So you see, first of all, we must understand that there's a knowledge deficit in our generation. That is my very first point on what can we do. There is a knowledge deficit in our generation. And you and I we need to realize that it starts with us. So how much do you know about the world? That is the first question. How much do I know about the world? What I'm trying to do is just an eye opener. I can't tell you everything. I'm just trying to broaden your mind so you realize that you have a lot to do. And that will not just influence your reading culture. It wouldn't just influence your reading culture, it will develop a hunger in you to get to learn about the world and to help others around you. My interest is not just in handing over to the youths in Nigeria. My interest is in handing over to capable hands that can drive this country to the next destination. And it starts with knowledge. With the state of Nigeria now, get your PVC and hand Nigeria over to some of these young persons that are all over the social media, and you'll be surprised by what you will find in 10 years' time. You'll be surprised. So, number one point with respect to what next is this: realize for your personal life that our generation, we have a knowledge deficit. I'm one of those people that I love focusing more on myself. Am I deficient in an area? Leave the external factors. We would handle them. But before leadership falls into our hands, are we really ready to carry this mantle? And I will tell you something. Don't be discouraged with the state of Nigeria now. I would just lift up your eyes as I'm speaking now. Lift up your eyes. Look at the next 15 years. I'll paint a picture for you now. Are you aware that in the next 15 years, at most 20 years, most of our current crop of leaders in Nigeria are not going to be there anymore? Most of us have not realized this. Do you know that for some time since the war ended till now, it's as if we are recycling the same set of persons in Nigeria, right? We are recycling the same set of persons. It's for a reason. Most of the generals that fought Nigerian war, they still have a sense of entitlement over Nigeria. They feel that Nigeria belongs to them. They own Nigeria. And they have boys in the military and in so many places. So they can literally dictate a lot concerning the state of the nation. And that is why Nigeria has been the way it is up until this point. But look ahead, look at the next 15 years. Many of them would be gone. It will be children against children. That is why I believe that Nigeria will change. It is an adage in Igbo land that it is not the same respect given to a father that is transferred to his son. In the next 15, 20 years in Nigeria, it will be children against children. And a lot will happen. Whether we believe it or not, leadership is falling on our generation. and we have to be ready to handle it. So the very first step we have to take is knowledge, realizing that we know less than we should. And we should pursue knowledge. And when I mean knowledge, I'm not just talking about scientific knowledge. I'm talking about knowledge about the world, how things work. Ask yourself, where are we getting it wrong? I'll recommend books when I'm done that you can read. They will really open your eyes with regards to where the world is headed to. And you will see that we are far, far behind. So when we say things like this, we think that leadership, it's in some years' time. I normally cite this example to people. Just a few months ago, my friend and roommates, we live in the same house, from Uganda. He finished his PhD ending of last year. He's my very close friend. So many a time we would sit back either in his room or in my room, and we're talking about Africa, things we are supposed to do, things we think we can do for Africa, the future of Africa. Little did my friend know that in no distant time, he would find himself in a position of authority. It was like a joke. Shortly before COVID, he finished his PhD and decided to travel back home to Uganda to leave United States. And the morning he traveled, I was particularly sad because we had already gotten very close, and it felt like I was losing a friend, an extremely intelligent young man. So he traveled back to Uganda for some months. We didn't communicate. And then one day, a mutual friend of ours, a professor from Iran, sent me a message. He said, "Hey, Winner, look what happened to your friend." I was scared, like, what happened to him? When I opened the link, you won't guess what I saw. I realized that he had just been made the executive director of one of the topmost ministries in Uganda. I was screaming. I personally was screaming. And then he sent me an email. He said, "Brother, I will call you tomorrow." And when he called me, we were laughing. And one thing he said, if anyone had told him that he would be in a position of authority suddenly, he would not have believed it. It happened so sudden. He never dreamt about it. So you see, it can be you in the next 10 years. That's why I cited this example. So he started recollecting the discussions we had about Africa. He started recollecting the discussions we had about Africa. Why I cited this example is because it can be you. So start now to prepare yourself for the future. Self-development. And when I mean self-development, it's not just in the area of your profession, particularly in leadership. And I will also point out this. You can actually be a professor, yet you know nothing about leadership. And we've seen that play out in Nigeria a lot. Have you not noticed that most of the people that facilitate the rigging of election are actually professors? Many ministries are headed by professors. So classroom education, it's not equivalent to leadership. We need to realize that. We have a lot of educated folks in Nigeria who know very little about leadership, and put them in leadership positions are going to mess up, because one of the key elements of leadership is vision and selflessness. And you must start building that capacity now. Vision. And note this fact, your vision is actually limited to what you know. If you do not understand the economy of the world today, you can never craft the vision for a nation that would meet up with the rate at which the world is moving. It's not possible. If all you understand is about petroleum and oil and gas and gold and how to mine them, like we have in Nigeria and among so many celebrities, they will never be able to craft a direction for a nation that can meet up with the pace of the world, because the vision you have it would always be hampered or hindered or limited, anyhow you want to put it, by the level of awareness you have. So self-development becomes very important, and not just for you, for your friends. When you gather, what do you discuss? See, life has ripple effects. You need to realize this. Life has ripple effects. When you gather in your offices, what do you discuss? When you gather in groups, what do you discuss? So start training yourself, first of all, knowledge-wise. Secondly, learn about leadership. Exercise yourself in that regards. It's very important. I normally cite this example. One of the major problems we have in Nigeria, and this problem is not just limited to the older generation. I'm already seeing it in our own generation. It's what I call short-sightedness. Short-sightedness. It's one of the greatest pandemics in Nigeria. We are so short-sighted that people are willing to sabotage an entire nation because of their pride. I'll give you an example. I will not name the university it happened, but it happened in Nigeria. I know of a man who went to Russia, a Nigerian. He did very well in Russia with federal government scholarship. And the Russian government wanted him to stay back, but he chose not to. When he returned to a university in Nigeria, he was given an appointment in a Nigerian university. This happened some years ago. He successfully convinced his medical school in Russia, one of the best medical schools in Russia, because normally, I think after every 2 years, they recycle their equipment. They take out all their old medical research equipment and get new ones. So he successfully got them to agree on a bilateral agreement. Said, okay, instead of just casting away this equipment, why not bring it down to my university in Nigeria? So we can create this bilateral agreement. You bring it down to Nigeria. After every 2 years, you ship it down to Nigeria. The university agreed. He came back to Nigeria, picked an appointment. And when it was time to go to Russia and sign the agreement, not being from the tribe where the university was located, the man who signed this agreement is not from the tribe where the university is located. The university, as you know, it's typical of Nigerians. They selected a committee to go to Russia and excluded the man from the committee. And funny enough, the committee members heading to Russia, none of them could speak Russian language. So when they got to Russia, they asked them, the university asked them, the agreement we signed has a signature. The man whose signature is on this agreement, where is he? What I'm telling you happened in Nigeria. They said all sorts of things. The university in Russia said no, that they wouldn't continue until the person that signed the agreement comes with them. Guess what they did? When they got back to Nigeria, instead of including that man who is not from their tribe, they decided to scrap the whole program. They totally scrapped the whole program. So as we speak, this thing happened in 1980 something till now. Universities in Nigeria, their medical schools cannot still do research of that quality that Nigeria would have started doing from 1980 something because of the selfishness of people. So who would have benefited from it? It would have, the bilateral agreement would have actually benefited their own tribe, because a lot of the students coming into the university are from their tribe. So you see that self-destructive nature we have. We need to start curtailing it now. Think beyond yourself. I don't know where you found yourself today. Whether in your job, I don't know whether in the church or in the mosque, wherever it is, think beyond yourself and your pride. And you need to start internalizing that attitude. Life is bigger than you. The future of Nigeria is bigger than you. It's bigger than your pride. I'm saying all this with a heavy heart and an understanding that, look, some persons listening to me today will take up leadership positions tomorrow. I know what I'm saying. You will remember when the time comes. Some persons listening to me today will take up leadership positions in the world. So start preparing yourself for that. Number one, take away this toxic. Number two, take away this toxic, a lot of these toxic behaviors that sabotage the growth of Nigeria and kept us where we are. Number three, understand that the world has moved past oil and gas and start learning about the economy of the world. So by the time you find yourself in a leadership position, you will not build your plans and everything around oil and gas. I think the most fundamental duty of the government in today's world is a stable economy and a stable political system. The government has no business handling the affairs of the nations in terms of businesses. They have no, all they have to do is regulation to make sure that there is stability. That is the business of governments. Invest in young man. Look at ASU. Now, these are, if Nigeria has a vision, there should never ever be anything like ASU strike. In fact, Nigeria would be investing a lot in education, because the fate of Nigeria is going to be built on how educated the minds of our populace are. So there should never ever be an issue of ASU strike in the first place. So it tells you that we have no vision as a nation. That is why we are having issues of ASU strike. So this is meant to be a series. I have a lot to say, and I really wish I have time to expand more on what is happening around the world. I really wish I have time to expand more on knowledge-based economy. It's hopefully one of these other days, coming days, I would focus more on that, giving you a full picture of what I mean by knowledge-based economy. Make your research well, do your research well. You find out that in the top 10 best economies of the world, most of, let me say top 20, the countries with the highest per capita and highest productivity per individual actually don't have much natural resources. So you ask yourself, why are they where they are? So if you are thinking that the reason why your state is poor is because they don't have oil, it's actually because we have oil that we are where we are, because it affected our brain. It reduced our efficiency. It's a well-known fact that necessity is the mother of invention. We've never found ourselves in that right situation where we are forced to educate people to think, first of all, and to be able to think and think well, education must come. And when I mean education, I don't just mean grabbing a certificate out of a university. As far as I'm concerned, we have many uneducated graduates in Nigeria. We have many uneducated graduates in Nigeria, and I'll prove this to you. No offenses intended. I'm trying to put this in such a way that somebody won't feel bad. I go online on Facebook and I see a graduate wanting to write how far, and the person writes HW and FR. It might look normal to you, but it tells me the quality of the mind behind the write-up. What does it take to put O between H and W? How many seconds does it take? And how many seconds does it take to put an A between F and R? The quality of the mind. The quality of the mind. I think I saw something recently where they said that many Nigerians fail IELTS because of their inability to differentiate between am, am, like I apostrophe M and then AM. Many actually failed IELTS because of it. You think it's a joke, but it tells you the state of the education in the country. It tells you a lot. So it starts with you. Ask yourself, what is the quality of your mind? It's a question you have to ask yourself today. What is the quality of your mind? What kind of discussions do you engage in? Having said that, hopefully, if we have time next week, I would delve more. I wish I can take this progressively because it's supposed to be enlightening. I wish to be progressive in this journey towards a better Nigeria. We need to understand where we are, the risk ahead, and what we can do, you see, to circumvent the situation, what we can do to prevent the danger coming at us straight in Nigeria, in our generation. Again, lift your eyes. In the next 15, 20 years, the baton of Nigeria's leadership will be handed over to us. Whether we believe it or not, it will. It will. For the Christians here, I would say something Many of you can make a research on, you can do a research on Elton, one of the men, the missionaries that came to Nigeria that said a lot of things, a lot of prophecies about Nigeria. And even if you are not too big in prophecies, you'll be forced to appreciate the fact that a lot of things he has said about Nigeria, have actually happened to the letter. He spoke about NYSC, spoke about South Africa, independence, so many things. And one of those things he said at a point where Nigerian economy was actually very strong, he said that Nigeria would be known for corruption globally. We will go so low that the name Nigeria would stink globally. And after that, there will be a turnaround. A phase of righteousness would come into Nigeria. I personally believe that we just clocked that rock bottom recently. How do I know? On Wednesday, I went, you really don't understand the full scale of what NSAS did. Currently, in the whole of the world, the entire world as we speak, everybody knows about Nigeria. Even people that never knew about the nation before. And do you know what they know about Nigeria? Corruption. A country where the police extort money from their citizens. A country where they kill people for nothing. It has never, we are known for corruption, but up until now, it was not a globalized knowledge. What NSAS successfully did, it had the positive and the negative. I went hiking with some friends on Saturday, and I met someone new from Dominica. And while we were talking, she asked me where I'm from. And when I said I'm in Nigeria, she was like, "Oh, Nigeria, NSAS, right?" I was like, "Yeah." That was actually when it actually dawned on me that the state of Nigeria has finally gone global. And it's a remarkable point in the history of Nigeria. I will also say this again. Don't mock at what is happening. Before now, the military have been killing at will. No investigations, nothing. But why is it that at this particular point, they killed, and for the first time, into a national investigation as to the reason why they killed and the people that killed for the very first time in the history of Nigeria. Change is gradual, but it's important that you know when the change starts emerging. So why am I citing these examples? To let you know that there is hope for us as a nation. Something is happening in Nigeria. Gradually, systems are shifting, things are changing. It's gradual, it's unnoticeable, but notice, if we will build a nation we will be proud of, if we will build a nation our kids will be proud of, it must be built by humans. It must be built with intentionality. It will not happen by mistake. It will not happen by just prayers. People must sit down, people must invest their lives, people must train themselves and prepare themselves for leadership and navigate Nigeria to the promised land. It must be an intentional progress. Nothing happens by mistake. Go and read up about Singapore. You read about Lee Kuan Yew, the Prime Minister of Singapore. Singapore, I cited that example before. Singapore was so poor to a point where Singapore went to Malaysia and begged Malaysia to absorb them as part of Malaysia. When Malaysia rejected them, they realized, the then Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, realized that they were left with no option, that they put themselves out. And what did they do? They had two options. Either we remain poor or we invest in the minds of our people. They chose the latter option, investing the little they had on education. When I mean education, I mean proper education of the people of Singapore. And what was the result? From 1965, when they requested, 1960 was when they requested of Malaysia to be absorbed. By 1985, yes, I think I'm right. By 1975, a difference of 15 years. Singapore was already known as a major manufacturer of electronics. In 15 years, today Nigeria does not produce toothpick. We only dig out crude oil in Nigeria. We don't produce toothpick. Within a space of 15 years, a country moved from begging a neighboring country to absorb them to become the major manufacturer, one of the major manufacturers of electronics. So what happened? The economy was built by intentionality. It was not a mistake. People sat down. People, in fact, Lee Kuan Yew, the then Prime Minister of Singapore, was once working with the Communist Party. He intentionally detached himself from the party because he wanted to build an economy in Singapore. They took some bold steps in educating their people. They took a lot of bold steps in shifting the focus of a generation towards a knowledge-based economy. A knowledge-based economy, in summary, it means an economy that is focused on training the minds of their people such that their minds can use technology to deliver goods, services in such a manner that it can boost an economy. As we speak now in the world, you have a lot of companies that are coming. You will see many of them in the next 10, 15 years. They are already at the background, where just 50 staffers is all they need. And yet their economy, they will be bigger and stronger than 3 oil-producing countries joined together. Microsoft is already doing it, but something bigger than Microsoft is coming with respect to genetics. And trust me, many of us don't know anything about what is happening in the field of genetics, and that is what will change the whole world. It's the technology, data, and genetics that will change the entire world in the coming, not too far a future. I don't want to go into details. Hopefully, when I talk about the knowledge-based economy any other day, fully and focus on knowledge-based economy, I would expatiate more on what a knowledge-based economy is, how it is built, how so many nations like Israel engaged it and got to where they are. And I will also delve more into the future. I'm more concerned about the future. I need to paint a picture of tomorrow. For us, I've spent a good deal of time studying many of these things. I need to be able to paint a picture of the future to the next generation of leaders in Nigeria. For me, it's very important so that we would not have men in this generation that will get to seats of power and start thinking about oil and gas. Many of the conflicts in Nigeria are oil and gas based. Why the world has, in fact, one of the journals said something, said the rest of the world, developed nations have moved past Africa and left her to her fate. You see what is happening in Cameroon? What are they fighting for? Oil. In the English part. And you think US, you think Germany will leave their business and come to Cameroon? It's funny. I will tell you this before I conclude. The fate of the black man as a whole is resting on the shoulders of Africans. Realize this. I'm not the first person saying this. Malcolm X harped on the same fact. The fate of the black man globally is resting on the shoulders of Africans. Malcolm X, that was the realization of this, led Malcolm X to the formation of Pan-Africa. Until we as blacks are able to build a nation of our own that we can call ours, a successful nation with a successful system, a beacon of light to the entire world, something every other race can look upon and say, yes, that nation was built by blacks and it's successful. It is working. We will never get the respect and regard we deserve from the entire world. No matter how many riots we do, no matter how many Black Lives Matter we go up, it's good. Those things are wonderful. But while we are doing all these things, I think it's time that we look inwards. Professor Lumumba says something strong. He said that the day Nigeria rises, Africa will rise. If you like, run to any nation of the world. If you like, even get their citizenship. Someone just says something that Zoom is now more valuable than ExxonMobil. Let me even shock you. In United States now, the companies that are topping the first either 20 lists of the most valuable companies, no oil companies there, not Exxon, not Mobil, not what are their names? Name them. Chevron. They are not. In fact, they are going down, 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 down. They are moving down every day. Zoom, common Zoom, is now more valuable than ExxonMobil, and you have a nation that is building her economy on ExxonMobil and Shell. In fact, our oil money can no longer sustain us. I heard we are now borrowing money from China. And people are still fighting, oh, what happens to this state? What happened to that state? Look, there are so many nations in the world that have no oil, they have no lands, nothing, and the economies are topping the charts in the world. Find out how those economies were built. They were built on the intelligence of the people. They were built on what is called a knowledge-based economy, an economy that is based on provision of services with technology in such a way that you can generate much with very little. Microsoft is what more than so many nations of Africa joined together. Now bring many nations of Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, join them together. Microsoft is worth more than many of these nations. And this is just the beginning. May I remind you, the current difference between wealthy and poor nations is currently in the ratio of 390 to 1. And it is predicted that with the rate at which technology is going, particularly with regards to genetics, and so many things that are coming up, that this particular index is going to increase. It's going to increase to 1,000 to around 1,000 to 1, and that will tell you a lot about the fate of Nigeria if we don't change the way we are thinking. If we don't stop talking about oil in our discussions about Nigeria and talk about the fate of Nigerian economy. Now look at what you ask yourself. Our governors, they don't understand these things I'm talking about. Believe me, they don't. That is why SARS does not understand that a young man can be in his house and be making money through a legit means. And they don't understand these things. They know nothing about it. Somebody is talking about regulating social media, and these are the people leading us. In fact, one of those talking about regulating social media is a youth. So that tells you a lot. I think I pointed out a number of things. I would rather answer more questions, because questions have their ways of picking out salient points that I could have forgotten, and I would like to answer as many questions as possible within the time frame. Thank you so much, and I hope to explain more as the days go by, or weeks rather go by. Thank you.
All right. Good day.
Yeah, good day.
All right, so I'm coming from a state, in my state, Edo State. The people here, they don't want to go to school. But I always knew that the people here, their mind, the way their mind works, they need a kind of education that will not actually put them in school. Now, how can we give them this love for education, wanting to know what should we do? What more can we do for them? Right? What
Okay.
I'm talking about, but yeah.
I would say this. Do they have phones?
Yeah, they do have phones.
And they use phones, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And many of them are young, right?
Yes.
They have access to internet, do they?
They do, sir.
Okay. And I'll give you a project. Why don't you think about developing a software that will be enticing enough for them to access it? And then you educate them through the software. You know, it's possible to take things to people where they can be found. If they refuse to come, it is said that I think if the mountain does not come to Muhammad, or so Muhammad will go to the mountain. Why don't you think of developing, now this is off my mind now, I'm just saying this, but think about it. Why don't you think of developing a software and find, fundamentally, I believe that anything is possible.
Yes, sir.
So if I can imagine it, then if you can sit down and think through it, it's possible. Why don't you develop a software and find a means to make it enticing enough for young people in Edo State to access that software, and you can educate them gradually through it.
What if it's not a software? What if it's something like maybe something else? Like what you're saying is something enticing.
Yes. Anything, it can be anything. I'm just giving you an idea. What I'm what I'm saying in effect is this: if they refuse to go to school, find a way of taking school to them. Find a way. It can be anything. And believe you me, doing this will take a level of selflessness from you. And that's exactly what I've been talking about. Living for something bigger than you. You can make it your own project. You are passionate about the state of education in your in Edo State. And you see how our selfish politicians actually they exploit the level of education in Nigeria. These are the ones they will go to when they need to win elections, not you. These are the ones they will give rice, not you.
Yes,
so you see, the situation of things, whether we like it or not, the state of these people affects us. One other point, one thing that the NSAS movement should have taught all of us is that it's not enough to be in my corner as an engineer, as a lawyer, as a doctor, and think I can be comfortable in my corner in Nigeria. What happens to every man affects every man. The state of the man in the village will eventually get down to you, because if the man in the village refuses to be educated, the politicians will use him and get back into office, and eventually SARS will one day lay hold on you. So the situation of your neighbor affects you. That's one of the biggest lessons I learned from 2020. That what affects my neighbor affects me. COVID started in China, some were laughing. Eventually, it got to everybody. So if 2020 has not taught me anything, it has taught me that the fate of my neighbor is my own fate if I do not work towards helping my neighbor. The negative fate of my neighbor will eventually get down to me. So you see, you see how the NSAS movement started peacefully, and they used who? Thugs. Those thugs, are you aware that they are with you? They're part of the ones suffering the bad roads. But what they could easily convince them because of the level of education. Their minds, the level of. So every educated youth in Nigeria should see the situation of the uneducated as a major concern. Because our collective consciousness as a nation is very low. We need to realize this. Our collective, there are many parts of the world where it cannot happen because the collective consciousness of the nation is very high. You will find it hard to find a group of persons that you will use to disrupt the overall leaning of the population in many nations. So our collective consciousness as a nation is very, very low. So why don't we engage on such projects to take education to people where they can be found? Even those that went to school. Now, I was thinking about, hopefully next week I can talk about that, capitalizing on this NSAS movement. Where do we go from here? We have realized that we have a collective strength. How do we channel this collective strength we have as a nation? Due to want of time, I can't talk about that today, but I wrote down some things on how we can channel our collective strength as a nation. The strength that we've kind of unearthed during this NSAS process. We just unearthed an amazing strength, united front that we never had before now. How do we channel this thing through the right process to run these guys that are destroying the nation out of town? So, but for today, I've measured on we as individuals. What do I have to do on myself? Where do I go from here? When we are done with talking about where do I go from here, we would go to where do we go from here. So we start with I, and then head to we. It's progressive. I want to take it that way so we can have better output at the end of this whole program. I hope I attempted to answer your question.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Aditola. Thank you so much for this session. It has really been enlightening. And one key takeaway is when you said that whatever affects your neighbor affects you. And I think that's something that we are neglecting as Nigerians. So thank you for pointing that out. So my question is, there's this narrative in Nigeria that, allow me to say it in pidgin English, school na scam. That means it doesn't really matter if you go to school or not. And the prevailing idea is that you can make money, and the amount of fraud we have in the nation is not really helping issues, because you see someone who is uneducated making more money than someone who actually graduated from university and all of that. And I think the educational system is to blame too, because you spend 4 years in school, you probably have to wait 1 year before you're mobilized, and then your masters is supposed to take like a year, 6 months. You can end up spending more than 2 years. So my question is, how do we change the narrative, seeing that it seems more luxurious not to go to school, to just engage in other aspects of life? So my question is, how do we change this narrative? Because I see it happening subconsciously. I even think it. I'm like, oh, why am I even doing this when I can just do this? So I see that it's a prevailing narrative, and I'm wondering, how do we stop it before it becomes something that is too late? It's too deep into the system. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Detola, for the question. I will tackle it from this point of view. I think basically our definition of education in Nigeria is horrific. Not education itself, our definition of education. What we do in Nigeria is what I call education for meal tickets. So you spend 4 years only to collect a meal ticket at the end of the day. So someone gets that meal ticket and thinks he's entitled to the rest to he thinks Nigerian government is owing him or her for the meal tickets. And that is why you also have situations where people go to school and cram their way through education, through higher institution, because they believe that once I have that meal ticket, I'm okay. And we are also so much concerned, overly concerned about grades than knowledge, because we believe that the most important thing is meal ticket. I will say this: the genuine purpose of education is to transform the mind. The purpose of education is the mind, to educate the mind. That's what education is. E.W. Kenyon put it this way: education is that process that brings out the capacity within you. So education is supposed to bring out the real you more than it gives you a certificate. The implication is this: if you are truly educated, I always say that an educated man can do anything, because education gives you an excellent mind. Proper education, let me use proper word, proper education gives you an excellent mind. So, but what we have in Nigeria is, like I said, education for meal tickets. And based on that definition of education, the claims of those that say that school is scam is true. You see, do you realize that if you read history, many of the great scientists, I realized that if you're an engineer, you must have come across Bernoulli's equation in so many engineering applications. How many of us know that Bernoulli was a medical doctor? In fact, you have so many of such interplays in so many fields where you find somebody that did so well, many discoveries in medicine, and you realize that, oh, he was a lawyer or she was a lawyer. So you ask yourself, what is it about their education that develops the mind such that it is limitless? It must be something bigger than what we acquire in our schools. I remember when I was taking my third year, one of my friends, he would always see me reading books on psychology. And I remember one day he asked me, he said, Wina, what are you even doing with all these books? You're an engineering student. Come on, why are you, what do you need these books for? I laughed. I said, As far as I'm concerned, what I came to school to do is to educate my mind, to develop my mind, not to get an engineering certificate. And my 5 years in school were actually the years I built the foundation for my life today, because I educated my mind. So you find many people, we need to redefine what education is. In the real sense of it, an educated man should be able to come out of school and enter into music and do excellently well, because his mind must have developed capacity such that it can carry anything, it has vision, it can see beyond what others can see. So education should not be about certificates. It should be about the development of the mind. So when you get out of school, you should be able to do many things. There are many actors in many developed nations that are prolific writers. But we have a country where a graduate cannot write how far very well, but he has a certificate and he's saying that school is scam. So you see, we have a horrible opinion or view of education. And that is why you have many graduates that don't read. I know someone that told me during NYSC that ever since he graduated, he doesn't even read. He doesn't even read a signboard. It's funny, but it's real. And there are many of such people in Nigeria. So when you understand the purpose of education, you see that school is not a scam. You are going there to develop your mind. And when you channel your attention away from, I have a friend who had the opportunity of graduating as the overall best student in a particular university. But by the time he got to third, fourth year, he lost interest in grades and focused more on developing his mind and so many skills. He eventually had one, he was on a 5.0 up until then, but because he shifted his attention away from it, he eventually had 1 or 2 Bs. He didn't graduate as the overall best student in the university, but right before he graduated, so many companies all around the world were looking for him. Google, Facebook, Bank of America, different companies, because you cannot speak with the young man. You can't engage him in a 5 minutes discussion and not be wowed. But go and check so many of his mates that had the 5 points and other first class, and you might be surprised at some of them. So it tells you a lot. Pay more attention on the development of your mind. If you successfully develop your mind, you will be successful. But if you succeeded in getting just a meal ticket called certificate, there are chances that you'll be one of those counted in the numbers of people that made others say school is a scam. So we need to start re-educating ourselves and our neighbors. So when you hear people say this, sit down with them and tell them more about what education really is. But it must start with you. Thank you.